Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. I've always seen my platform, Movies TV Mad, as a friend to Zack Snyder. But a good friend can always criticize another friend. Of course, we're not really friends. We don't know each other. But this platform has always been a friend to Zack Snyder. You know me by now to know that I hate the modern entertainment industry. I hate what it's become. I don't believe Hollywood has functioned properly since the 1970s. Film historians agree with me on that. I hate actors and directors who can't take criticism. I hate YouTubers, content creators and critics who can't criticize politely. There's a way that you can deliver your negative criticism about a movie, a television show, an episode of TV, an animated series, an animated movie. And it's not being done these days. Zack Snyder doesn't care what you say about him. That's clear. He's one of the few people in this derivative industry today who can actually take criticism like an adult. That's one of the many things I admire about him. Now, this video is about readdressing the hate for Zack Snyder. The hate he's getting from the fandom menace, Nerd Roddick, the critical drinker, Mauler, you can take as nothing. He ghosted their mate on Geeks and Gamers, I think well over a year ago. He was going to do a charity stream for his suicide prevention charity. He then was told not to do it. He came out and said something. They didn't like it. So they have an axe to grind. I follow Nerd Roddick, the critical drinker, and Mauler. I like them. I like what they do. But you can take their criticism as nothing, right? And I won't watch. I watch a lot of their stuff, but I won't watch their criticism of Zack Snyder because it comes from a place where they're cheating their audience. Because, yes, they've never really liked what Snyder does. Anyway, but they're going even deeper on the hate. And as much as I love them and admire them for their success, because I admire all successful people, because you have to work hard to be successful. They are not happy that Rebel Moon represents a POC, a woman of colour. We know that. We know how these guys work, right? We have to be honest about it. If they don't like what I'm saying, I don't really care. These things are the truth. We know what they think, and we know how they deliver what they think. Their criticism, as far as I'm concerned, means absolutely nothing. And it means even less to Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder doesn't give a shit what a website named after a tomato says about him. That Rebel Moon Part 2, the Scargiver, only has about, 14, 15 or whatever percent. You can't value people on what a website named after a tomato says about them, right? Personally, if I owned my own studio and made my own art, I would make an announcement from the beginning. I want critics to be honest about our work, about our artists, but, try and be constructive with your criticism, because my studio would have an academy. We will be training actors, young actors, camera people, stunt people. It will be a proper MGM 1930s style studio. And I think it's important for young artists to get the praise they deserve and adulation, but I think they also need to learn criticism, constructive criticism, and here in my imaginary fantasy studio, we would help them get through that. So criticism, negative or positive, is really important, and to learn, to deal with the negativity towards your art, because it's something you have to accept. But the hatred that Zack Snyder gets is something totally foreign to me. I don't understand it because it goes deep. This man is not an aggressive man. He's not a hateful man, so I don't understand it. I'll never understand it. You've seen the reaction to both his movies. Now, I think I'm a reasonable person who understands a good film from a bad film. I liked the first movie. Most people didn't. That's subjective. Art is subjective, right? But I like the pacing of the first movie. As I said yesterday, really enjoy the opening on the farm. I love how Noble is first introduced, and we see how ruthless he is. I think Ed Skrein is the best thing about both movies. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But both Rebel Moon and Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, are slimline versions of around 2 6-hour movies, or around that. Comment down below and correct me if I'm wrong about the length on the director's cuts. They're not even director's cuts. The director's cuts we're going to see is how the movies are supposed to be seen. So basically, Zack had to bend the knee to get Netflix to allow him to make these movies. So he had to agree to slimline 6-hour movies and condense them in 2 hours. That's virtually impossible. Everyone shitting on these condensed slimline movies knows the situation, that Zack had to bend the knee to be able to make 2 6-hour movies, or whatever they are, ultimately. Ultimately, we will not know if these are good, great, or bad movies until we see the director's cuts. We know this. This is the usual thing with Zack Snyder. He's different. He's not like everyone else. He needs to deliver a movie at a certain length. He has a certain vision. It's obvious to every reasonable person has said that there's things missing from these movies. But also, as I said, we can only judge these movies on what we're seeing in the slimline versions. So that's another thing. So, has the experiment worked? I think for Netflix, it's going to work, and let me explain to you why. Because all they care about that it's a Zack Snyder film. People are coming in to watch these movies, either to hate watch them, or to love watch them, or just to see what all the fuss is about. They'll get views. Hateful or joyful or whatever views are all the same to a business like Netflix. Then, when the director's cuts come out, again, people are going to watch them for the very same reasons. So they get double the views. So the experiment has actually worked in terms of views, and it will work with the director's cuts as well. In terms of, a quality of a film, the experiment has not worked because they're not the movies. They're not the vision. They weren't made to be 2 hours. Yes, the man knew he would have to condense, the original viewings of these movies to 2 hours. But how do you take a film that's supposed to be 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever, and condense it into 2 hours? It is not possible to make what people would conceive these days of a good movie like that. So now, but it's all been done on purpose because Netflix knew what happened with the Snyder Cut, what happened with BVS. That WB took half an hour off BVS, and when people saw the rest of it, a lot of people were saying, actually, this is a better movie. A lot of people still said, we still don't like the movie, but it's better than it was without the half an hour. Now, a lot of people liked the Snyder Cut. Some said it was better than Justice League, which isn't. That's an underhanded compliment, really. Anything. Me standing here dancing in my boxers would be better than Justice League. Well, maybe not. There is a video of me dancing in my boxers, as one of my haters liked to reveal a few months ago. But yeah, So you can't, it's difficult. It's difficult for people, for normies to come in and watch these movies. They're not going to care that, it isn't their problem that these were made to be 6-hour movies and they're condensed to 2-hour movies. And that's the problem here. So you get the hate, you get the reaction. People love to hate Zack Snyder. They love it. It's the game. The Hollywood Reporter's article said, rinse and repeat about Snyder's movies, that these movies have the same problems that Snyder's movies always have. I spoke about Rebel Moon the Scargiver yesterday. It was so padded out. Someone mentioned it about the pacing. Very slow until we get to the action, which of course is shot beautifully. The problem is, we get the death of Nemesis. It's really hard to be invested in that death because she's a very good character, a very well played character by a really good actor. And I can see what they're doing with her. But we haven't seen enough of her. She hasn't been fleshed out. There's also the criticism of the flashbacks and, how, Nerdrotic was making fun of how they all talk about themselves. And I think that is an issue. And it'll be interesting to see in the director's cuts if those elements are cut out and we actually see these things. I would assume within a 6-hour director's cut, which the first movie definitely is going to be. I'm not sure about the length of the director's cut for the sequel. You would think they would not need to do that because that's where you kind of think, really? That's the only backstory we're going to get? And I spoke about this yesterday, that the way I would have gone at this, that I would have built up all these characters, including Cora, before they meet in the first movie, and do what they did in early seasons Game of Thrones. That's what I would have done. So there's more value in that. So when they finally meet, it's really earned. And you know their backstories because you've actually seen them in real time. Flashbacks, don't really work. You can't solely develop a character on flashbacks. People will point out Lost, but there was just as much character work done in kind of what we were seeing on the island as what we were seeing in the flashbacks, right? That's why it worked, and it's a TV show. You can get away with that on a TV show because you have more time to do it. A film, especially a 2-hour film that's supposed to be 6 hours, so I think a lot of the criticisms of both movies are valid. It's just the joyful way people enjoy in shitting on Snyder. But Zack Snyder fans and Zack Snyder are used to this. It's rinse and repeat. We had it with Watchmen. We had it with Man of Steel. We really had it with BVS. Not so much with the Snyder Cut. It's a thing people like to do. But if we look at the huge marketing campaign, Zack used the hate for him to sell the movie because he wants them to hate watch it. Netflix want people to watch it for whatever reason they have. And I think if you really think by hate watching Zack Snyder's films and doing a hateful review about them that you're hurting Zack Snyder and getting some kind of revenge because he ghosted your pal, you've got another thing coming. And the fandom menace have done a very good job in talking about New Hollywood, in exposing New Hollywood, and I admire that. I really do. But you're not going to take down Zack Snyder. He's triggering you on purpose. He's baiting you. He's luring you in. And when you do these hateful reviews, you make a lot of money. You do well. Shitting on Zack. Shitting on Hollywood. Congratulations. I applaud you for that. But you're not actually hurting Zack Snyder or his career. What is he now? 60 years old. He's made movies. He's a millionaire. He will continue to make movies his way. And there's nothing you can do to stop him. You're not hurting him because he has a world of fans. He has people who admire him. So you can't hurt him. as someone who likes the guy, as a human being, someone who respects his art, because as I said yesterday, one thing you can say, he's a beautiful, visual director. That will not change. Nobody shoots, an image better than Zack Snyder today. Now, I'm not going to say he's the best at that in Hollywood history, because he's not. Because he's got his toys, he's got, CGI, he can press a button and make something look good. He just knows how to do it better than anyone, most of them, from directors today. Denis Villeneuve is very good. But let's be clear, there's a difference between making something looking good today and making something look good in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because they didn't have the machines, the buttons to press. So I would give more credit to someone who creates great cinematography from the 30s to the 70s to someone who does it in 2024, because you've got the technology. It's actually easier for you to make something look good today. I mean, if you look at the history of The Wizard of Oz, people were ending up in hospital because they really wanted to create something visually pioneering, which they did. But it wasn't easy. It literally is a lot easier to do it today. And that must be understood, especially from like Nolan fans, Snyder fans, Villeneuve fans. Someone creating great image these days isn't the same as someone doing it back in the 30s to the 70s. Let's not get that twisted. But I love Zack Snyder's visuals. I've already said he went a bit too far with the slow-mo this time, because there was a lot of it. I appreciate his slow-mo work. I like it. But when it's too much, I kind of think, Zack, you need to ease off a little bit on the slow motion, but it's his movie. He can do whatever he wants. One thing we can credit about both Rebel Moon movies is the score by Tom Holkenborg. I think absolutely fantastic. The man's music is always a delight. He brings out the emotion. He brings out the moments. He's perfect for Zack Snyder movies. There's no question about it. So, on the hate for him, it's not going to change. People will continue to hate him. Some Zack Snyder fans who, for example, hate on James Gunn are not helping Zack with this situation, because these gun bots, right, are going to come out and attack Zack and laugh that he's got a low Rotten Tomatoes score because you've gone after their director. That's what war's like. You do something, they do something, and it never ends. Someone has to stop firing for a war to stop, for peace in our time. Zack said a very interesting thing when he was asked about James Gunn's DC Universe and Superman movie. He goes, I'm open to it. As long as it's done properly, as long as it's got the mythology and everything, I think we can say that he's not going to dive as deep as you did, Zack, with Superman's mythology. And that's a shame, because there's no origin in this Superman movie. But I wait to be, wowed with James Gunn's Superman, and I hope it's a good movie. Despite my love for Zack Snyder and my hate for the way he and Henry Cavill and everyone else in the DCEU, in the good part of the DCEU, was treated. So these people can't hate Zack Snyder. Let me say that again. They can hate Zack Snyder, but they can't hurt Zack Snyder. Their hate, is irrelevant. But they get off on it. So, and I see people's reactions to Rebel Moon Part 2. The over positivity. Oh my God, this was better than the first movie. Action from start to finish. There wasn't action from start to finish. That is not true. That's actually a lie. As I said, the slimline version of this sequel is padded out with a lot of filler and a lot of slow pacing. And really, they're just building up till the third act and all the war. And when you get to that third act, when you get to the war, it's very, very exciting. And it's done well. And this is why The major reason I think we should all watch the director's cuts, and the reason I'm looking forward to the director's cuts, is for clarity. We need clarity in what these movies are. What are they supposed to be? You know, if you're getting a 6-hour director's cut, that's huge. What the fuck is he filling 6 hours with? Although we wondered the same thing with the Snyder Cut. I mean, look, I don't think I've ever seen a 6-hour movie before. Now, I know Gone with the Wind's about 4 hours and the Ten Commandments maybe 4 or 5 hours. I don't think I've ever seen a 6-hour movie. So I'm really looking forward to that. I want to own those 2 director's cuts on physical media. There's no question about that. But I'm looking forward to seeing them on Netflix. Now, I don't know if they're going to be released in chapters or properly. I don't know what they're going to do. Netflix and Zack may really milk this. I don't know in the release structure of these things. But I can say that Zack's relationship with Netflix has been very profitable for Netflix. The first movie was hugely viewed. For whatever reason, people were viewing it for, and I'm assuming, despite the hate for the sequel, the more hate for the sequel, and as I say, mostly it's the padding for most of the movie and the way we had the flashbacks for the characters' stories that I think people will criticise the most. I think the action's great, the score's great, but most of the movie's too slow and it's full of filler. And I don't like that, because I feel like I'm wasting my time, basically. Because seeing people doing a harvest, you know, getting corn, you know, it's a bit of an insult if you ask me. That's my opinion. Doesn't mean I suddenly hate Zack Snyder, I'm just being honest, right? That's what I say. Friends can constructively criticise friends. And if you can't take criticism, you're not going to have many friends in your life. And I think if you're going to work in this industry, to anyone who's ever going to work in this industry, whether you're a child, whether you're middle-aged, whatever your identity is, if you can't take criticism, constructive criticism, or even more aggressive criticism, you're not going to last very long. It's okay to be hurt by criticism, but the most important thing is to take the good criticisms and improve. It's what I've done all my life. It's what you've got to do. And when you think, hang on a minute, this one's got a point, then you do something. You know, our critics can really help us, can really improve us. And the hateful critics are just being mean for being mean's sake. You never come out and speak about. As an actor, a director, a producer, you should never come out and speak out about criticism. We saw it happen with Sydney Sweeney the other day when that older producer said she isn't attractive and she can't act. I'm not going to argue with that. All I'm going to say about that is that there's no need to be nasty about someone. I don't know if I've addressed this on my channel. I'll say it again. There was no need for that woman to be so nasty. But I don't think her criticisms are that far from the truth. But Sydney Sweeney came out and said, yeah, you know, how can one woman criticise another? Are you being fucking serious? What a stupid thing. What a stupid response. Ignore it. Rise above it. You know, Sid, you are a first trap who can say her lines, but let's be honest. You're not Vivian Leigh, you're not Judy Garland, you never will be. Accept it. Sharon Stone accepted what she was in her era. She was an okay actor and she looked good. Accept it. You know, work to your strengths in life. But if you can't handle criticism, any type of criticism in this industry, you ain't going to last 5 minutes. As I say, it's okay to be hurt by it, but that hurt should be used as a fire inside you to prove people wrong, to show people what you're made of, and to take the good criticisms, the constructive criticisms, and use them to improve. That's how I see it. And unfortunately, in this derivative industry, egos are so huge, they can't take criticism. As I said earlier, if one person in this modern day industry can take criticism, is Zack Snyder. So I see it all, I laugh at it because I know Zack will be laughing at it. Zack is only human. I'm sure some of it hurts him, but he's got to be used to it. Now, the Rotten Tomatoes score is something he would have expected. I don't think he expected people to like both the slimline versions of these movies very much. As I said on the top of the show, they were made to be, a multiple hour, piece of entertainment. 4, 5, 6 hours. How can you take something that's meant to be 6 bloody hours and condense it and slimline it to 2 hours? It's not possible. It's not viable to make a good film out of that. But what's interesting, and I think this is very interesting because a lot of people don't like the first movie, and I do, I think, in fact, considering that the first director's cut, the first movie is going to be definitely 6 hours, I think he did a very good job in slimlining the first movie. Now, I think not very many people will agree with that. I prefer the first movie to the second movie. Most people preferred the second movie to the first movie. But I like the pacing of the first movie. I like the introduction. I like what it does. But I just feel this story should have started with young Cora, with the mother world, being betrayed, looking after the princess, building that up, and then seeing her betrayal, or the way she's betrayed by that guy who adopted her, right, that warmonger. We see her leave, the bosom of the mother world. And then in the second movie, she turns up at the farm. She builds up the relationship, right, with all those people on the farm. And then Noble comes, blah, blah, blah. It's the second chapter, if you like. You build it up like that. I don't think the way they started the movie, you skip so much character development. And they could have built that whole first movie in developing Cora, developing Nemesis, and all the other characters, Gunner, etc. But they didn't do that. And I think the thing is, we don't know the real movies because we're talking about 6-hour movies, or however long the sequel's going to be, of the director's cut. So, as I said on the top of my review yesterday, and the top of my first review, be my guest and go and check out the first one and the second one. Impossible films to review because you don't know what they really are. Because, let's be honest, right? When someone makes a film, this is why deleted scenes exist, right? They cut things from the movies. They do 6, 7, 20 takes, right? So they can choose. So they can make, it's a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? That's what a movie is. Rebel Moon was not made in that way. Rebel Moon, parts 1 and part 2, were made to be a multiple hour movie, right? The first movie is supposed to be 6 hours, right? God knows how long it was before he cut down the director's cut to 6 hours. That's the real movie. That's the real story. That's the honest work. And until we see those movies, we can't genuinely judge them. As I say, the fandom menace, the haters, they're going to say, and I think quite rightly, we're going to judge on what we see. And they're going to say it's a ridiculous situation that there's a 6-hour movie and it's condensed into 2 hours. It is, but it was a really good business plan for Netflix because you get the consumption from both slimline movies for whatever motivations and reasons people have for watching them. Then when the director's cuts come out, it's the hype again. People come in to watch them, right? So Netflix are winning. They're winning at this. There's no question. Having Zack Snyder works for whatever reason you're watching Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead or Rebel Moon. He's a big name. Whether you love him or hate him, you're going to watch his stuff. Netflix understood this. Sanderos understood this. And that's why Snyder is there. Snyder is good for business. All publicity is good publicity. And in the terms of Zack Snyder, they understand. It doesn't, some directors, people won't watch their work. Oh God, it's him. his movies are boring or her movies are boring. With Zack, people will always watch his stuff, whether they love it or hate it.